So in this video, I'm going to go through my top 5 self-help books so that you can start applying some of the principles and you can start feeling better, you can get control of your life, you can start conquering a bit of stress. So I'm just going to make a note of the fact that I don't really have that many hard copies. The reason is because I prefer to listen to audiobooks because you can do that when you're out and about, when you're at the gym, when you're in the car. I'm just much prefer it that way, but I do have some hard copies, so I will be bringing them up when I'm talking about it. So if you do find this video useful, please like and subscribe, would appreciate that. But without any further ado, let's get to it. Coming in at number 5, The Chimp Paradox by Professor Steve Peters. Now this is a really good book if you're just looking for a simplistic approach to sort of managing your stress levels and your anxiety. And what it does is it's based upon psychological principles, but it sums it up in a way that's just so simple for anyone to understand. So as you know, as human beings, we've evolved over millions of years to get this high level thinking that we have today and do all the amazing things we can do. But left behind is still the old stress mechanisms in our brain, which are towards a lower proportion. Now, the way this summarises it and makes it so easy is what, rather than going into what those mechanisms are, it simply, as a holistic approach, goes, okay, all those mechanisms, when you're starting to feel down or when you're having these negative thoughts or you're feeling a bit fearful, it calls them the chimp. Now, the chimp being obviously because we devolved from chimps in our ancestry history, and so that's why it takes that approach. But being able to label it in that way is just such a simple way of going, okay, well, that's my chimp that's having these negative thoughts, and so therefore I can start doing something about it. So after talking about ways that you can spot the chimp when it's starting to take over your thoughts and things like that, it then moves on to ways of how you can manage it going forward. So a quick summary, it's a simplistic book but quite effective in being able to start taking control of things and a good introductory into going down that self-help route. So number 4 is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, and I've probably absolutely butchered that name, but oh well. This book is an excellent book in understanding how the power of habits and how they can affect you over time to get you into some dark places if you're not careful, but equally how they can get you into some good places if you learn to start managing them. So there's a thing in psychology known as a positive feedback loop. Basically what that is a series of behaviours that over time is going to knock on and maximise the chances of that other behaviour happening again. An example that I was taught is a guy owns a business. He likes to go for a drink after work to deal with the stress from working. But over time, because alcohol increases your stress over time, he starts to become more stressed at work, and so his business fails more. So he starts to go for more drinks, so he starts to get more stressed, and his business fails more, and it just goes round and round and round and round and round before he's in the dumpster with a bottle of whiskey or something. And so what the book helps explain is how these things can happen in such simple and small little behaviours that over time can just maximise into something far greater, and before you know it, you can end up in a rut. And you look back and you just think, God, how long has it been since I've been happy or felt good in general? And the reason is because these positive feedback loops have just taken over time, and you've got negative habits and things like that. And then finally, over time, you're going to start to feel a lot better in yourself, and it's just going to compound and compound. So obviously the benefit of this book is once you're educated about it and you can start to notice in your own life where these things might be occurring, you can start to systematically look at, okay, well, this is clearly not doing anything good for me, neither is this, neither is that, and you can start to replace them with better behaviours. Number 3, Cognitive Behavioural Therapy, Techniques for Retraining Your Brain by Jason M. Satterfield. So just a quick note on this one, I think this is only available in audiobook form. I think there might be some sort of Google transcripts you can get, so you can read it that way, but there's no sort of you couldn't go and buy it in a store basically. But this audiobook or book is an excellent one by a CBT therapist himself, and what is good is it just basically completely explains the principles of CBT and then gives you ways in which you can apply it in your daily lives to start obviously again feeling better over time. I think a special note that really sets this one aside is in the audio version is he's got recordings from his actual from his lab or whatever you want to call it, his therapy, And so you can hear these recordings, and you can hear the transition from the start to the end, and how they get better over time. At the start, it's really, it's really it opens your heart to hear, and it's a great thing to hear, because you just realise that you're not alone if you are suffering, and even if you are, there's probably someone who's way worse off than you are. And so, being able to really empathise with that is brilliant. And then when you get towards the end, and you can hear in the voices that they're completely, they're so much better. It's so heartwarming. And so obviously with this one as well, we're getting a lot more deeper now. CBT is obviously kind of the main sort of therapy that psychologists use nowadays. And so it really explains like all the different techniques that are used, what it actually is. So yeah, we're getting to a much more deeper level now. But I do get that some people do just prefer the higher level things, and they can just get on with it, and they're not really interested in the detail or where it might have come from. But this explains where all these self-help sort of principles, these guidance things, what people are coming out with nowadays, it's all based on CBT fundamentals, really. Number 2, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fudge by Mark Manson. I've said fudge, but you can guess what it is. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a... apparently a YouTuber cracking down on swear words and stuff now, so got to be a little bit that way inclined. This is a great book because it's sort of how could you say, like a mixture of simplistic and complex at the same time. As it sort of takes a really sort of jokey, simplistic view at things at times, but then it'll go on to say, well, actually, and it'll talk about some really deep things, like there's some deep philosophy in there, like from Nietzsche and things like that. But what this book talks about, which none of the other ones have yet, really, is really talks about people's values, especially in modern day society, and where we might be going wrong in placing values and in things that just aren't that important. Social media, things like that, what technology might be doing to us, the degrading of like complex relationships, deep relationships, family relationships. It just seems that nowadays we're not as bothered about those things, and he sort of explains how if you can get your values back on track, then you can start to really, you can start to heal yourself from the inside out. That like you're going to understand that there's way more to life than all these just silly, insignificant things. And as I mentioned earlier, there's quite a fair bit of comedy sprinkled in there. It's quite funny at times. It makes it a good read, though. When it gets too serious, it'll spruce it up with something that's actually quite hilarious. So it is a good read like that. All right, here we are. We made it. Number 1, coming right at the top, is 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. So I've got a hard copy of this one. I think I've read it through just normal way, like once, and then I've listened to it twice. So this book really does just completely take the part. It really does. It's right at the top of the pedestal. But the thing is, it is really, really, it's quite complex, and so I completely understand why a lot of people are just put off by it. So basically, what the book does, Jordan Peterson, you've probably heard of him actually. He's quite a little bit of the YouTube superstar at the minute, for a number of reasons. But at the end of the day, he's a clinical psychologist, and basically what he does is he lays out a set of rules for which you should live by, and then explains them from multiple different angles, and like why they're true on so many different levels. He talks about evolution, he talks about religion, philosophy, psychology, psychotherapy, CBT, all the psychodynamic principles from the Freudian and the Jungian and things like that. So it really does. It's such a very, very deep book. So yeah, it's an absolutely brilliant book, but I do feel like I wouldn't recommend going to it first. And it's not a critique of the book in any way at all, because obviously I'm singing from its hymn sheet, quite literally. But what it is what it's so deep, and I could easily see people, if they're really, really, sort of in a bad way, just wanting something quick and straight away. And that's why I've sort of gone this way in the list, because the Chimp Paradox, you can basically start to go, okay, look, when all these bad things are happening, it's clearly just some stress response to keep me safe, and you can start to label it and notice it straight away. And then as you go through the other books, you're going to start to learn more and more different tactics of attacking it and understanding it and starting to combat it. And then finally, once you're sort of in a better place, you can then go into the deepest one and go, and it's just going to blow your mind, and you're going to go, ah, God, it's been all these rules and all these principles of being better have been true all the way back in biblical times, all the way over evolution. It's just what you've got to do to manage yourself and to combat all these negative emotions that you might have. So there we have it anyway. Those are my top 5 self-help books at this moment in time. They might change over time. Some obviously it's not really a new market, but it's definitely a popular one at the minute, and it's going to become more popular, especially as we become more sort of, technologically dependent. We're all social media fiends, and it's just killing us over time. All these things are killing us over time. So this type of conversation is going to become more and more important. And so to summarise, really, I think I've come at this angle from a really sort of a negative sort of light, in terms of I'm just taking the presumption that you're all suffering really badly, but all of these books can be really done just for any sort of thing. If you're wanting to just start at the gym, or if you're wanting to start a new project, start a new job, these things are just going to help you gain some principles to build yourself up and become stronger. But I do think they are most effective for people who are obviously really, really suffering. But anyhow, I mean, that's just my own personal opinion. So obviously, for me, if you're suffering, getting better, that's all I'm interested in. If you just, if someone's not suffering, and people just want to make themselves the better person it can be, absolutely, that's what I'm all about. So, but anyhow, enough rambling, because I've definitely rambled in this. Please like and subscribe if you did find it in any way meaningful or helpful or just enjoyable to watch. Thanks for watching.